Hey guys, tonight we're heading to a place where the wind never stops howling, the tea is always lukewarm, and the only thing standing between a ship and certain doom is you. Yes, you in a thick wool sweater, 3 sizes too big, standing at the base of an old lighthouse, holding a rusty key, and wondering if the seagull that just flew past looked vaguely threatening. You're the new lighthouse keeper, and let's just say, you probably won't survive the night. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and local time in the comments. I always love seeing where and when you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The wind hits first. It doesn't knock politely or rustle your collar. No, it lunges at you like an over-enthusiastic dog made of salt and spite. The coastal air is sharp, soaked in brine and thick with the smell of wet stone and old rope. You climb the slick rocks toward the lighthouse, a squat, brooding cylinder of pitted stone rising against a silver sky. The sea is foaming just below the cliffs, hurling spray skyward like it's auditioning for an opera. There's no one here to greet you. Your predecessor is long gone, transferred, they said. Or maybe just gave up and drifted away on a barrel. Hard to say. Historians still argue whether lighthouse keepers were truly replaced on schedule, or if some simply vanished into the mist. You shoulder the wooden door. It creaks open like it's been holding a grudge since 1884. Inside, dark stone walls, a spiral staircase, and a smell that can only be described as damp goat in formaldehyde. There's a note pinned to the wall with a bent nail. It reads in pencil and questionable grammar, "Keep the light burning. Always. Don't let her sleep. Supplies in crate. Good luck." Not ominous at all. You drop your bag beside the foot of the stairs and try to get your bearings. The first floor has a battered table, 1 chair, and a chipped mug shaped like a lobster. You find a crate tucked in the corner filled with slightly dented tins, a jug of whale oil, and a single sock. No pair, just the sock. The sun's already low. You glance out the slit-like window at the horizon, where the sky is turning the color of oversteeped tea. It's almost time to light the beacon, but first, you climb. The spiral staircase isn't steep, but it's cruel. Narrow, uneven stone steps twist upward like a drunk snake. You run your fingers along the cold, crusty wall, mostly for balance, but also just in case something decides to shove you back down. At the top, the lantern room. It's mostly glass and rust, like a greenhouse designed by a sadist. The big lens sits in the center. An old, battered Fresnel, its many prisms dulled by salt and time. A whale oil burner rests in the middle, waiting to be coaxed into flame. There's no electricity here. That's a luxury reserved for mainland lighthouses, and, apparently, people who still have knees that work properly. Lighting the beacon is a delicate business. You fumble with flint and steel, hands numb from the wind slipping through the glass panels. You remember the instructions. Light the wick gently, keep the oil steady, don't look directly into the lens once it starts rotating unless you want temporary blindness and a sudden identity crisis. Eventually, with a quiet pop and a bloom of pale fire, the wick catches. The lens begins to turn, slowly, click, 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 as the flame magnifies and sends a golden beam sweeping across the waves. You did it. You lit the light, which means now you get to go back downstairs and not sleep, because lighthouses don't keep themselves running. You return to the keeper's room and pull out the logbook. It's thick, water-warped, and smells faintly like wet parchment and regret. Inside are entries from previous keepers, some practical. 2 a.m., checked burner, wind from east, light steady, and some, not so much. 3:15 a.m., Heard humming in stairwell again. Not investigating. You write your name at the top of a fresh page and note the date. Then pause. What is the date? You check your pocket calendar, which has helpfully disintegrated. You guess. Marchish. The wind howls again, rattling the windows like bones in a jar. You look toward the fireplace, purely decorative. The coal box contains 3 lumps and a dead moth. You wrap a scratchy blanket around your shoulders, light a candle, and sit on the edge of your cot like a child in time out. You're officially on duty now. The entire coastline is counting on you to not fall asleep, not let the light fail, and not hallucinate from isolation and stale sardines. So far, you're 1 for 3. The first full hour passes slowly, like syrup dripping uphill. You sit wrapped in a blanket that smells like mildew and resignation, listening to the waves slam the rocks below. The light upstairs clicks along, steady, dependable, for now. But you know you'll have to check on it again soon, and again after that, and again after that. Welcome to the glamorous life of a lighthouse keeper. You decide to take a better look around your new home, or as you're beginning to think of it, your stone-shelled prison with a killer view. This lighthouse isn't exactly modern. It was built, allegedly, sometime in the mid-1800s, possibly 1854, possibly 1823. Historians still argue whether the foundation was laid during a storm or after one, which honestly checks out because the entire building looks like it was assembled by someone fleeing a thunderclap. Everything inside is old and strangely damp. The walls weep salt water in places. The ceiling sags just enough to make you uneasy, and the floor creaks in a tone that can only be described as haunted wardrobe. There's no plumbing, of course. That would be far too luxurious. There is a wash basin, which collects water from a roof cistern when it remembers to, and a cracked mirror that turns your face into something between a potato and a disappointed owl. Very flattering. The pantry is a small cupboard next to the stairs, filled with the usual keeper staples, flour that has fused into a solid brick, a jar of pickled something that might have once been onions, and a tin labelled meat, probably beef, that's so dented it looks like it was kicked by a horse wearing tap shoes. In the far corner, under a cobweb that probably has its own family history, is your cot, a thin mattress atop a wooden frame. You lie down for a moment just to test it, and the springs emit a noise like a goose honking underwater. Still, it's a roof, it's shelter, it's technically a job. You glance toward the window and catch a glimpse of the lamp's beams sweeping through the mist. It's oddly comforting, like a heartbeat. As long as that light moves, someone out at sea knows they're not completely alone. That part's real, the romance of it. You're not just turning a wheel or trimming a wick. You're holding a thread between land and ocean, between safety and disaster. Without that light, a sailor could steer into rocks and never make it home. Of course, the problem is that lighthouses rarely get any credit until they fail. You crack open the keeper's log again, mostly because it's the only entertainment available, and discover more gems. One entry simply reads, "Found a crab in my boot. Named him Captain. He's in charge now." You put a mental pin in that one. Good to know the loneliness gets creative. Some of the earlier pages, though, are surprisingly poetic. One keeper wrote of watching storms sweep in across the sea, and how the light from the tower seemed to slice the rain like glass. Another described a shipwreck survivor banging on the door one night, half drowned and babbling in 3 languages. No one ever confirmed the story. No record of a wreck that night. But the writing was desperate, real. You find that a little unsettling. You also find a small drawing of a fish labelled, "Tried to bite me." Disrespectful. You get the feeling people didn't last long here. There's a small trapdoor in the floorboards of the supply room. You pry it open, slowly, cautiously. and find a set of stone steps descending into a cold, narrow space lined with shelves. It's the old storage cellar, mostly abandoned now. There's an overturned barrel, a couple of cracked lanterns, and what might be an old foghorn with a family of spiders living rent-free inside. You hear a faint scratching sound. You close the trapdoor very quickly. Back in the main room, you try to start a fire with one of the pitiful lumps of coal. It's a sad attempt. You get more smoke than heat, and soon the whole room smells like a barbecue inside a boot. You give up and decide to brew some tea instead. There's a small kettle and a packet of something pretending to be tea leaves. You boil some rainwater over the sputtering coals and pour the cloudy liquid into your lobster mug. It tastes faintly of rust and low expectations, but it's warm. That's enough. You look at the clock on the wall. It's ticking, but just barely. The minute hand judders like it's being powered by pure anxiety. You note the time in the logbook, sip your tea, and stare out at the waves. The light continues to turn. You go back inside before your teeth start clicking out Morse code. Back at the desk, you unwrap what passes for dinner. A slice of bread so hard it could be used as a roofing tile. A can of meat that resists opening like it's protecting state secrets. And a few pickled something or others that may once have been cucumbers, or sea slugs, or very unlucky carrots. You eat with the resigned efficiency of someone trying not to notice what they're tasting. One bite crunches when it definitely shouldn't. You make a mental note to chew more cautiously next time. Then, another logbook entry. 10:24 p.m. Ate something questionable. Still alive. Light holding. Foghorn refusing to negotiate. You hear scratching near the supply crate. You pause. Wait. Listen. Scratch. Scratch. Pause. Scratch. You peer under the table, lifting the edge of the blanket like it's shielding a horror movie scene. It's a rat, wearing, inexplicably, half of a cigarette wrapper as a sort of cape. He looks at you like you've interrupted something private, then vanishes into the shadows like a diva refusing an encore. Right. Rats, of course. Why not? You lean back in your chair, close your eyes for a moment and just breathe. The sea groans below. The foghorn blasts on cue. The light above ticks and glows. And you are alone in a building made of wet stones and historical guilt, holding the line between safety and shipwreck with a crust of bread and a sense of duty born mostly out of stubbornness. Not bad for your first night. But you're not even halfway through. The lantern is due for another inspection, and you can already hear it calling to you, though it might just be your knees creaking ominously. You hoist yourself off the chair, retrieve the battered oil jug, and begin the winding ascent once more. Spiral stairs are romantic until you've climbed them 6 times in one night. Then they're just a particularly passive-aggressive form of leg day. At the top, the lantern room is a little warmer now. The glass walls trap heat, or maybe you've simply started to sweat through your sweater, which, frankly, has the texture of sandpaper woven by angry sheep. The beacon burns on, flame flickering a little more than you'd like. You crack open the fuel hatch and top it off, watching the oil ripple sluggishly like it's plotting revenge. You wipe the burner housing with a rag that used to be white. Now it's mostly grey and feelings. Behind you, the lens keeps turning, steadily, slowly, like a ghost pacing back and forth in a room it can't leave. The faint ticking of the mechanism is starting to blend with your heartbeat. You don't know if that's calming or concerning. You give the glass a quick wipe. A single smudge could scatter the light, weaken the signal, and leave a ship guessing where the rocks are, which isn't really a guessing game anyone wins. It's not glamorous work, but it matters. Historians still argue whether early lighthouse keepers were chosen for their seamanship or simply for being able to survive isolation. Based on your experience, the requirements must have also included can haul whale oil while half asleep, and willing to eat expired beans without complaint. As you finish tidying the lantern room, you catch your reflection in the glass. Your hair is a mess. Your eyes are puffy. Your sweater looks like it lost a fight with a hedge. You look every inch the mythologized lighthouse keeper, only far less stoic and far more itchy. Back downstairs, the foghorn lets out another mighty biou-wah, which startles you enough to spill a little oil on the floor. You mop it up with the same rag, adding new shades of sadness to its already tragic hue, and glance at the clock. Midnight. Time for the logbook. 12 a.m. Light steady. Oil topped off. Heard creaking in stairwell, probably just house settling. Or not. You hesitate for a moment before adding, also, foghorn now seems louder. Possible conspiracy? You chuckle to yourself, which feels mildly dangerous this deep into the night. Then again, it's either joke or start drawing faces on the potatoes. You make a round of the outer catwalk to stretch your legs and make sure the storm shutters are still holding. The wind grabs at your coat like a pickpocket with commitment issues. You shuffle around the curved walkway, clutching the railing, boots sliding on slick stone. The view is impressive, if your definition of impressive includes vast, impenetrable blackness punctuated by the occasional sea spray to the face. The light swings over the fog again, cutting a neat little path through nothingness. You think about ships out there, sailors staring through murky windows, trusting that somewhere out here, someone is awake and paying attention. You're not just a keeper of light. You're a promise. Of course, promises get cold. You retreat back inside, teeth chattering, and try to coax a little more heat from your feeble coal stash. One lump remains. It looks so sad you almost apologize before tossing it into the grate. There's still no real fire, just the theatrical suggestion of one. You wrap yourself tighter in your blanket and sip more of your briny tea. It tastes like betrayal and copper. You chew on a biscuit that could probably serve as a temporary replacement for a missing roof tile. The quiet creeps in again. The wind has calmed slightly. The sea is still relentless, but the rhythm of the waves becomes background noise, like a giant snoring under the floorboards. You think about all the people who have sat here before you, writing in this logbook, watching this light, eating this same awful biscuit. Some of them went mad, you're told. Not dramatic madness, just slow unraveling, like a thread pulled from a sweater. One entry in the log mentions a man who forgot how to speak properly after 6 months here. Another simply stopped signing their name, just drew a small picture of a wave each night. You wonder which you'll be. Still, there's something calming about the monotony, the sameness of it. Light, oil, wind, fog. Light, oil, wind, fog. It's a pattern, a rhythm. You can rest your mind on it, like a wave rolling into shore and back out again. You lie on your cot again, blanket over your head, like a medieval tapestry. It smells faintly of mildew, salt, and sheep, possibly ghost sheep. You let your eyes close, just for a second. You dream about ships that never dock, about sailors who never sleep, about a seal in a captain's hat, ringing a bell made of seashells, then the foghorn yanks you back into reality with all the gentleness of a freight train full of bagpipes. You sit up, blink hard, and check the clock. 12 minutes have passed. You haven't missed a log entry, but you feel like you just aged 10 years. You open the book, scribble down, 12:14 a.m., light strong, foghorn, still emotionally aggressive. Dreamed of maritime dictatorship run by seals. And that's where you are now, sitting in the half-light, listening to the foghorn howl, sipping terrible tea, and trying to remember why exactly you said yes to this post. Probably the view, you think. Definitely not the biscuits. You check the logbook again. The ink is starting to smear from the humidity, and you're reasonably sure a small slug is eyeing it like it's a spa brochure. The lantern above still turns, slicing the fog like a knife through an extremely indecisive soup. You make a new note, 12:42 a.m., visibility low, sea state, grumpy. Slug has entered negotiations for page 3. You stretch. Your back makes a noise like a haunted accordion. The room is still saturated in that warm meets rancid scent of the burning whale oil upstairs. Your sweater traps the heat and the smell, like it's building a slow, wool-based revenge plan. The lantern room is due for another check soon, but you stall a bit. You're tired, yes, but also beginning to smell like smoked haddock in a library. Before heading up, you decide to at least try and clean yourself. You are, after all, a professional. The wash basin in the corner has collected enough rainwater to serve as your sad little spa. You remove your sweater and shirt and brace yourself. The first splash of water feels like being slapped by a wet ghost. You inhale sharply and do your best to scrub your face with a square of fabric that's done double duty as a dish towel and, possibly, a curtain in a past life. You try to wash your armpits. You immediately regret this decision. Cold water plus wool-based chafing equals what can only be described as shivering betrayal. Still, you feel a little more human when you're done. Damp, sad, but human. You find a second shirt tucked deep in the bottom of your bag. It smells faintly of home, of cedar, dust, and the life you briefly forgot existed beyond this rocky outcrop. You sit for a minute, just holding it, letting your fingers trace the fabric. It's a small thing, but it reminds you that this is temporary. Eventually, someone will come to relieve you. Probably. Historians still argue whether isolated lighthouse postings had strict rotating schedules or were more of a good luck and Godspeed type of arrangement. Evidence leans toward the latter, especially in more remote locations where weather, funding, and general interest in human welfare were wildly inconsistent. You head upstairs for the light check. The stairs feel slipperier now, your damp socks offering roughly the same traction as an eel on a marble floor. You climb carefully, each step creaking in protest. The lamp's still steady. The lens gives a quiet groan as it rotates, perhaps out of solidarity. You check the oil level, the flame, the rotation timing, all holding strong. You wipe a small smudge from the inner glass and gaze out at the sea. Still no ships. Just waves and fog and moonlight trying very hard to exist. You stay a moment longer, not out of necessity but out of awe. The horizon glows faintly under the beam's sweep, a moving cathedral of light and salt. It's strange. The loneliness feels softer when you're above it all, like floating over your own thoughts. You make your descent and try, one more time, to sleep. You lay on the cot, now wearing your backup shirt and a blanket that smells marginally better than before. You arrange the damp wool into something that might qualify as cozy adjacent and close your eyes. The wind has died down. The foghorn continues its relentless rhythm, comforting in its own irritating way, just as your breathing begins to settle. Kloom! A deep, metallic bang echoes through the lighthouse like someone dropped a cannonball on the roof. You bolt upright, heart racing. For a moment, you wonder if a ship has struck the rocks, or if the lantern mechanism exploded, or if the ghost of Captain Crab has returned for vengeance. But no, just a shutter flung open by the wind. You grab the lantern and your coat and begin another stair climb, this time to the outer balcony. The cold slaps you the moment you open the trapdoor. The gust tries to take the coat right off your shoulders. You fight it, lean into the wind, and slam the shutter closed with all the grace of a chicken trying to fly sideways. You secure it with a rope you find dangling nearby, possibly from your predecessor's laundry line, possibly part of a long-forgotten incident best not thought about too hard. Back inside, you collapse into your chair. The foghorn sings again. You update the logbook. 1:14 a.m. Shutter blew loose. Secured. Wind returned with petty vengeance, foghorn still performing solo opera. You tear a piece of bread in half, more out of boredom than hunger, and chew it like someone trying to remember what joy tastes like. A seagull lands on the windowsill, peers inside with judgmental eyes, and flies off again. Rude. The candle has burned down to a waxy stub. You light another. The flame flickers and settles, casting long shadows on the walls. You notice one of the shadows doesn't quite match anything in the room. You stare at it. It stares back. Then it turns out to be your boot. You move on. In this place, your imagination becomes a co-worker, one that never clocks out, likes to rearrange your memories, and occasionally pretends that the sea is whispering your name. You lean back, hands behind your head, and try to convince yourself that you're still sane. Mostly. Sort of. Outside, the waves pound the cliff with renewed enthusiasm. The foghorn howls again. You let the rhythm carry you. Light, foghorn, wind, breath. Light, foghorn, wind, breath. A kind of music, a kind of madness, and you're just one beat in it. You've stopped checking the time. It's become meaningless. All that matters is the rhythm. Light, foghorn, wind. Check the oil. Write in the book. Don't fall asleep face down in the sardine tin. Still, you peek at the clock out of habit. It says 2:07 a.m., but it also said 2:07 a.m. about 10 minutes ago. Then again, it's been ticking backward for a while, so who knows? You haul yourself up for another patrol, this time to inspect the lens room once more. The stairs are getting harder, not physically. Well, okay, yes, also physically, but mostly mentally. Each rotation feels more dreamlike. You find yourself forgetting if you're going up to check the light or already coming down from it. You reach the lantern room, rubbing your eyes. The beam still cuts through the fog. Good. The flame burns steady. Great. The rotation motor, however, makes a tiny pop noise and stutters. You freeze. The lens jerks, then stops. No sweep. Just frozen. Oh no. Oh no, no, no. You leap into action, which is to say you sort of flail your arms and slap at various parts of the mechanism until your brain catches up. You find the crank housing on the side, remove the casing and inspect the weight-driven chain. The counterweight has snagged on a piece of rusted gear. Of course it has. Historians still argue whether lighthouse maintenance manuals ever included proper troubleshooting procedures, or if most problems were fixed with equal parts guesswork, panic, and yelling at metal. You grab your multi-tool, rusted, bent, but technically functional, and wedge the gear free. It groans like a whale with allergies. You unstick the weight, reset the crank, and, with a hopeful little prayer to no specific deity, watch the lens begin turning again. Tick, tick, tick. The light resumes its arc. You exhale so hard you feel dizzy. 2:19 a.m. Lens motor jammed, cleared. Rotation resumed. Mild cardiac incident narrowly avoided. You return to the keeper's room with trembling knees and the kind of adrenaline crash that makes your hands shaky and your thoughts just a little bit poetic. You sit. You sip the world's worst tea. You try not to think about what happens if that gear fails again. Outside, the fog is thicker now, almost a living thing. It curls around the lighthouse like it's trying to remember you. The horn blasts on cue, and the echoes bounce back slower, softer, swallowed by the mist. There's a knock. You freeze again. A knock. On the outer door, 3 short taps. Not the wind, not a bird. Knock, knock, knock. You don't move. The hair on your arm stands up. You stare at the door. Nothing moves. You wait. 5 minutes. 10. The knock doesn't come again. You log it anyway. 2:41 a.m. Heard knocking. Outer door. Possibly wind. Possibly not. You consider opening the door to check. You do not. Instead, you pull your blanket tighter, now firmly convinced it has magical protective powers, and decide to double-check the pantry. just in case you need to bunker in with nothing but pickled objects and stale biscuits. You rummage through the tins. One can has a hand-scrawled label. Use only if desperate, seriously. You put it back gently and whisper, "Not tonight, cursed tuna." From the corner of your eye you see movement. Just a flicker, just the candle flame, probably. You decide to avoid all reflective surfaces for the next hour or so, just to be safe. You return to the logbook. The entries are beginning to feel more like diary confessions. You're writing to future you now. Future you, who maybe gets to leave this place, or at least inherits slightly warmer socks. You turn to the old entries again, looking for comfort. You find one from over 20 years ago. Sometimes I swear I hear the waves speaking. Not with words exactly, but meaning. I miss my dog. Same. You scribble a response in the margins. Something about the tea. Something about Captain Crab. You're not even sure who you're addressing anymore. Future self. Past keepers. The lighthouse itself. The silence stretches on, long and wide. It's almost peaceful. Almost. Until the foghorn blares again and jolts you halfway out of your skin. You mutter something unkind under your breath about acoustics and revenge. You step outside to walk the outer gallery, just needing to breathe air that isn't recycled through musty blankets and whale oil. The sea is invisible beyond the railing. The mist has eaten everything. The beam of the lantern glows faintly above, refracted in millions of droplets. The lighthouse stands here like a stubborn tooth in the mouth of the coast, holding ground against time and weather. It doesn't care how tired you are. It just expects you to keep going. You rest your forehead on the cold stone of the wall for a moment, eyes closed, just one deep breath. Then you return inside. 3 a.m., walked outer catwalk, visibility 0. Sea smells like wet pennies. Foghorn stable. You notice your candle is almost out. You light another. Your matches are nearly gone. You realize you're more upset about this than the lens motor failing. Priorities. The wind is shifting again. You hear it whispering down the chimney, testing the cracks in the stonework. The shadows dance around you like the lighthouse is trying to remind you. You are very, very alone. And you haven't even hit the halfway mark. It's now well past 3 a.m. and everything, your limbs, your brain, your sense of humour, has entered a kind of soft shutdown. You've reached the stage of tired where even blinking feels like effort. The only part of you still operating at full speed is your imagination, and unfortunately, it's gotten weird. You stare at a knot in the wooden wall that definitely looks like a face. Not a scary face, just disappointed, like it expected better of you. You apologize to it. It does not respond. The light above is still turning. That's the one reliable rhythm in this place. Even your heart feels like it's beating in sync with it now. Tick, tick, sweep, tick. You trudge up for another check. The lantern room is quieter than usual, save for the groan of the wind brushing against the glass. The oil is holding steady. The flame dances with a kind of smug competence, and the lens turns with a purr. You feel like patting it on the head. You settle for whispering, "Good job, buddy," instead. You glance out at the sea. Still no sign of ships, or life, or direction. Just black water and wet air. And then you see them. Lights. Just 2. Low on the horizon. Moving. You freeze. Not because ships are unusual, they're not. But because something about these lights doesn't make sense. They're too far apart. Too low, and they don't follow the beam like normal navigation lights. They move opposite it, against it. You press your face to the glass and squint. They vanish, reappear, and then nothing. Gone. You remain still for a full minute, waiting, watching. Nothing returns. You log it anyway. 3:28 a.m. Observed lights at sea. 2. Low, moving against the beam. Gone within 30 seconds. Possibly ship, Possibly not. You sit in the lantern room for a while longer, listening to the mechanics hum and creak and tick. The Fresnel lens throws little rainbows on the walls. You follow one with your fingertip like a child, just for something to do. Historians still argue whether keepers in isolated posts frequently reported sea mirages and light anomalies because of atmospheric distortion, or because their sleep-deprived minds needed something to fixate on besides beans and mildew. You descend again, legs wobbling, and find a new surprise on your desk. A feather, just sitting there, dark grey, slightly curled at the tip, and definitely not something you remember seeing earlier. You check the ceiling, no holes. You check the room, no birds. You check your own hair, still human, still featherless. You stare at the feather, then place it gently on the edge of the logbook like it's a paperweight for weirdness. You write, 3:42 a.m., found feather on desk, not mine, room secure, feeling watched. You wonder if you're starting to tip into paranoia. You yawn so hard it cracks your jaw, then decide to try and lie down again, just for a bit. You wrap the scratchy blanket around your shoulders and settle into the cot, facing the wall this time. The glow from the candle flickers gently, casting a golden haze across the room. You start to drift. Then the horn goes off again, reminding you, no sleep for the mildly heroic. You sit up, sigh, and throw the blanket off with the flair of someone attempting a theatrical exit and failing. You go outside to the catwalk for a walk in the mist. The fog is thicker than ever. You can barely see the railing 2 feet in front of you. The light overhead feels muffled, like it's shining through gauze, and it's quiet. The kind of quiet that presses against your ears and makes your breath sound too loud. Then something brushes your hand. You spin around, heart in your throat. Nothing, no bird, no branch, no reason. You retreat inside at what can only be described as dignified jogging speed. Back at the log, 4 a.m., walked catwalk, visibility 0, something touched hand, likely wind, probably wind, logging for sanity verification. You huddle near the cold stove again, pretending it's still putting off warmth. You pour the last of your water into the kettle and set it on the weak flame. The hiss of boiling becomes the closest thing to a lullaby you've had in hours. You pull out a biscuit and give it a resigned look. You eat it anyway. Just as you sit down, the flame in the kettle flickers sideways. Not down, not up, sideways. You freeze again. You whisper, no thank you, to no one in particular. And then silence. No wind, no horn, no ticking, nothing. The silence grows heavier. It presses on your shoulders, your chest, like the air has thickened. And then, tick. Just one, from the lantern room. And suddenly, all the sound returns. The wind, the horn, the sea, the breath you didn't know you were holding. You write nothing in the log this time. You just sit, very still, listening. This place is old, that you knew. What you didn't know, what you're only just starting to feel, is that it remembers. The first faint sliver of dawn is still hours away, and time feels like it's started curling in on itself. You light your last match, watching the tiny flame stutter into life like it's reluctant to be awake. Same, you think. Same. You place the new candle on the desk and glance at the logbook. The entries from the past several hours look more like the ramblings of a man trapped in a very small room with a lot of loud thoughts. Possibly because that's exactly what they are. You do another oil check. You don't need to yet, technically, but it's something to do. Something that involves movement. Something other than sitting here wondering if that knot in the wall still looks disappointed in you. It does. The stairwell is colder this time. The kind of cold that makes your breath come out in little puffs, like your lungs are trying to send smoke signals for help. Your boots make damp, tired thuds with each step. The rhythm keeps you grounded. The lantern room greets you with its usual glow. The flame is steady. The lens turns with quiet grace. And yet, The room feels different, as if something just left, like a dream fading the moment you try to remember it. You scan the glass for smudges. None. But your reflection seems off. Not frightening, just not quite in sync. You lean closer. Your reflection doesn't. It almost does, but the timing is just a little wrong. You laugh nervously, then blink hard, and everything's back to normal. Probably just the light, or the fog, or the fact that you're running on roughly 30 minutes of sleep and 7 biscuits. Historians still argue whether lighthouse keepers reported visual anomalies as hallucinations, weather-induced illusions, or as genuine experiences filtered through isolation. Officially, no one likes to admit that a room full of spinning glass and oil fumes might get a bit weird. You log the check, 4:37 a.m., light solid, rotation normal, feeling of presence, minor visual weirdness. Possible over-caffeination without caffeine. Descending again, your legs feel like jelly set in concrete. You realize you've stopped even noticing the foghorn unless it's not there, like a heartbeat. If the foghorn ever fails, you suspect your soul might just float right out of your body from sheer panic. You sit by the kettle again, now long cold. You forgot to drink the tea you made hours ago. It stares at you from its chipped mug, scolding you silently. You consider drinking it anyway. You do. It tastes like regret and rust. Outside, you hear something new. A splash. You pause. Splash. Again. Not the rhythmic crashing of the tide. Something closer. Closer than it should be. You grab your oil lantern and open the main door. The fog greets you like an old friend with no respect for personal space. You step out onto the small rock landing, ears pricked. Splash, there, just below the steps, in the shallow pool carved into the rock by centuries of erosion. You hold the lantern high. A seal blinks up at you. You exhale, heart still racing. Just a seal. Normal. Natural. Adorable, even. You whisper, "You're not the one knocking on doors, right?" The seal blinks again, then flops back into the water and disappears with an indignant snort. You return inside, half laughing, half exhausted. You scribble 4:55 a.m. seal encounter. Possibly local, possibly messenger from Poseidon. Either way, no door-knocking fingers observed. You start to write a second sentence, then stop. You stare at the logbook for a long moment, then simply draw a tiny doodle of a seal wearing a captain's hat. The horn blasts. You jump. The candle flickers. You check the storage cabinet again. Not because you need anything, but because sometimes you just want to open a door and be surprised. Inside, a few mouldy tins, some rope, and an old oilcloth coat. You brush it off and hang it on the back of the chair, just to feel like you've redecorated. You glance again at the feather you found earlier. It hasn't moved. You poke it gently. Still a feather. Still weird. You wrap yourself in the blanket, more for comfort than warmth now, and lean back in the chair, eyes closed. You dream again, this time of endless stairs. You're walking up, and the light is always just one floor above. But no matter how many steps you take, you never reach it. The horn sounds from somewhere below you. A knocking echoes through the walls. You turn. There's no one there, just fog, stretching into forever. You wake to silence, not the calm kind, the wrong kind. No horn, no wind, nothing. You sit bolt upright. The candle still burns. The light is still sweeping. But outside, nothing. You rush to the main door, fling it open, and are immediately swallowed by dense, motionless fog. The silence is loud. You climb the stairs 2 at a time, your heart pounding, every step echoing like thunder, into the lantern room. Everything seems fine. Then you hear it, from below. Knock, just once. You turn, but no one's there. You're alone at the top of the tower with 25,000 pounds of stone between you and the earth. You write, 5:21 a.m. Silence outside. No foghorn. System check pending. Knock from lower floor. Investigating after deep internal screaming. You place the logbook down, straighten your shoulders, and begin the slow walk back down the spiral steps. Whatever this is, dream, isolation, lighthouse, ghost union protest, you're not going to ignore it. You take each step down slowly, your hand grazing the curved stone wall like you're descending into a crypt, which, to be fair, it kind of feels like. The air thickens with each turn, like the fog outside has snuck in and settled somewhere deep inside the lighthouse's bones. The knock didn't come again, but that somehow makes it worse. A second knock might have confirmed it was wind, or a bird, or a hallucination with excellent timing. One knock is a tease, one knock is an invitation. Halfway down, you pause. Listen. The stone presses cold against your spine. Nothing. No sound. Not even your own breathing for a second. You're holding it. You exhale loudly, on purpose, just to break the silence. You reach the base. The door is shut tight. You test the bolt. Still latched. You whisper, "All right, if you're a seal, you'd better be wearing shoes." You open the door. Nothing. Fog rushes in like an eager puppy. You lean out, lantern raised, peering left, then right. Just the craggy edge of the rocks and the swirling, endless mist. The sea is silent. Not calm, just muted, like someone wrapped the whole ocean in a blanket. You don't step out. Instead, you close the door, secure the bolt again, and lean your forehead against it for a long moment. Historians still argue whether the psychological strain of long-term isolation in lighthouses was taken seriously by early lighthouse boards or simply written off as cranky behavior. Most support structures for keepers didn't come until decades later, after enough of them cracked just loudly enough to make someone care. You don't feel cracked, not yet, just stretched, like taffy pulled across the railing of a spiral staircase. You scribble in the log, 5:31 a.m., investigated knock, no signs of contact or visitor, fog density increasing, sound behaving oddly, beginning to suspect weather is gaslighting me. You make tea, not because you want to, but because boiling water gives you something to focus on. The sound, the heat, the ancient comforting ritual of pretending hot water makes things better. You chew a biscuit while it steeps. It's stale. They're always stale. The kind of texture that dares your molars to retire early. You hear a faint click. You freeze. You glance at the logbook. The feather is gone. You stand, knocking your chair over and sweep the desk with your arm. Empty. No feather. You spin around. The room is unchanged. You mutter, "All right. Now you're definitely messing with me." You check under the table, behind the chair, in your pockets. You even check your hat, just in case the feather decided to rejoin its people in a symbolic gesture. Nowhere. You write, 5:46 a.m., feather missing, room untouched. Assume it has returned to wherever it came from, or is now haunting a biscuit. You sip the tea. It's lukewarm now, slightly better than hot salt water, but only just. You check the foghorn controls, still operational. No apparent reason for its earlier silence. You press the manual override. It blares, painfully loud. You feel your own soul retract slightly. So it works, but it chose to stop earlier. Comforting. You sit back down, rubbing your temples. The sun is still a suggestion, not yet a presence. Everything is still blue-grey and endless. You take out the small keepsake from your coat pocket, a watch that doesn't tick anymore, frozen at 9:13, a photograph curled at the edges, and a slip of paper with a scribbled quote. Lighthouses don't go running all over an island looking for boats to save. They just stand there shining. You whisper, "Well, I'm here." Shining. Try not to eat me, weird sea spirits. You laugh, then stop. Because you realize it was funny. That's something. You stand, stretch, and do the one thing you've been putting off all night, checking the basement. Every lighthouse has a basement. And no, it's not a forbidden pit of sorrow, but it feels like one. The stairway is narrow, steep, and smells like rust and memory. You take a lantern, your last one. The door creaks open. You descend. The basement isn't large. Just a stone room, a coal bin, old barrels, ropes, tools, and a crate labelled Property of the Lighthouse Board, 1887. You brush off the crate. The wood flakes in your hand like dandruff from time. You crack it open. Inside, journals, dozens, from past keepers. You sit on the stone floor, lantern beside you, and open the first one. The handwriting is neat, careful, dated April 1889. The fog does not leave. I fear it remembers us. Well, that's a start. You flip through more. Heard tapping from the upper stairs. Not wind, not rain. A gull flew into the lantern glass and vanished. Not shattered, vanished. She spoke to me again tonight, asked if I remembered drowning. I do not. You put the journal down very slowly. You open another, dated 1912. I've begun speaking aloud more. I say things like, nice day, to no one. I answer myself too. Perhaps it's not madness. Perhaps it's just being thorough. You chuckle, then realize that's basically what you've been doing. You return upstairs with a strange mix of comfort and dread. At least you're not the first to unravel a little. You note it in the log, 6:14 a.m., found past journals in basement, some unsettling entries, feeling less alone, in several senses. The sky is beginning to lighten, just barely, a pale smear behind the fog. You might make it through the night after all, unless the feather comes back riding a seal and asking for its room key. You sit by the window now, watching the slow, nearly imperceptible change in the sky. The black is softening into charcoal. The fog isn't clearing, because of course it isn't, but it's becoming translucent, like someone dimmed the opacity. You sip the rest of your tea. It's gone cold again. You drink it anyway. The lighthouse feels different in these pre-dawn hours. Not safer, necessarily. Just more resigned. Like both you and the building have agreed not to try too hard anymore. You each know your jobs. You each know your limits. You reread the journal entries you brought up from the basement. One in particular stands out. It's dated 1933 and written in a hurried scrawl that barely stays between the lines. She knocks when it's calm. Never in the storm. She waits for stillness, waits for attention. You set the journal down. Maybe this is why they never passed these down. Not because they were lost. Because someone decided it was better for new keepers to start with clean minds. A blank slate, which frankly you no longer are. You decide to try the lens room one more time. Not out of necessity, just out of restlessness. The stairs feel familiar now, like a path worn in your bones. You could walk it blindfolded. The flame is steady. The lens turns. The sea, or what little you can see of it, looks calm. But you remember the journal. She waits for stillness. You shiver. It's not cold, not really, but the kind of chill that comes from the inside out. You check the oil level again. You even dust off the housing of the gear you fixed earlier, as if to say, see, I'm trying. You leave the lantern room and descend again. Your steps are slow, tired. You're running on crumbs, caffeine fumes, and mild existential dread. Back in the keeper's quarters, you change your socks. You'd almost forgotten you had a dry pair. They feel like a spiritual upgrade, your reward for surviving until nearly sunrise. You scratch another note into the log. 6:42 a.m. Morning light creeping in. Lantern stable. Journals still unsettling. Dry socks achieved. Morale, cautiously optimistic. You consider making a breakfast of sorts. You find half a hard biscuit and a tin of beans. You warm them slightly and eat slowly. It's not good, but it's warm. That counts for something. Then, footsteps. Just a single creak, one floor below. You freeze mid-chew. You strain your ears. Nothing. Then another. Not heavy. Not rhythmic. Just one step. Then silence. You grab the lantern again. But this time, you hesitate. What if you don't want to know? You mutter, it's probably the building settling, which is the universal lie humans tell themselves when buildings creak. Still, you go. Downstairs. Slowly. Each tread of your boots echoing too loudly. The storeroom below is empty. Of course it is. But on the floor, where there was dust just hours ago, is now a set of fresh, damp footprints. Bare feet, leading to the base of the spiral stairs, then vanishing. You don't follow, you just stare, then walk backward up the stairs like you're trying to outrun a horror movie cliché. Back in the keeper's room, you write 7:01 a.m. Footprints on lower floor, bare, human-sized, vanished near stairwell, did not investigate further, may have reached choose your battles phase. You sit down, cradling the warm tin in your hands, even though the beans are long gone. You watch the door. No more footsteps come. Historians still argue whether strange sounds and sightings were the result of sleep deprivation, storm-battered senses, or the natural effect of too much solitude combined with rotating machinery and wind howling through stone tunnels. But you know what you saw. You also know that if this was a ghost, it was at least polite enough not to touch your tea. So there's that. You try the radio again, an old sputtering machine mounted on a rusted stand near the supply shelf. You adjust the knobs, static, whining feedback, a faint crackle of something unintelligible, no voices, no rescue, not even a weather report. You write, 7:18 a.m., attempted radio contact, no signal, strong desire to be the only one using this frequency. Thanks. You open the window slightly, let in some air. It's damp and salty and tastes like morning. You look out across the sea, and for the first time in hours you see something alive. A bird, just a gull, wheeling through the mist with lazy disinterest. But it reminds you, the world is still turning. The day is still coming. The sun, as unmotivated as it may be, is on its way. You watch the gull land near the edge of the rocks and pick at something. You whisper, "Good morning, Scout." Thanks for checking in. You glance at the log again. There's the missing feather, sitting perfectly on top of the last page. You didn't hear it fall. You didn't place it there. You stare for a long moment. Then, without breaking eye contact with the room around you, you pick up the feather, walk to the window, and toss it gently into the wind. It disappears into the fog. You return to your chair. You don't log this one. Some things are better left undocumented. The feather doesn't come back, which honestly is all you needed right now. You sit quietly as the fog shifts from opaque grey to a more forgiving shade of blue-white. You can almost tell where the sky begins now. Somewhere out there, the sun is climbing, reluctant and under-caffeinated, just like you. You crack your knuckles and stretch, bones popping like distant rifle shots. Your body is stiff, your face salt-crusted, your thoughts loose and swimming. But you made it through the deep end of the night, the weirdest part, or so you hope. The logbook lies open beside you. The ink from your last entry is still drying. Well, the second to last one, the last thing, the unlogged thing, still hums in the back of your brain like a half-finished chord. You don't write it down, but it stays. You eat another biscuit. This one crumbles on impact. It explodes into a small pile of gravelly dust. You eat it anyway, because the alternative is remembering what you dreamed about earlier. The never-ending stairs, the fog with a memory, the knock. You check the foghorn again, still working. That small, blessed bellow is your new favourite sound. You consider giving it a name, something dignified, like Clarence or Mildred. Outside, the gull is back, or an Annan gull. You pretend it's the same one. You pretend he's checking on you. You nod in silent gratitude. He poops on a rock. You take it personally. You jot it in the margins. Gull returned. Rude. Mood. Unstable. You consider reading more of the journals from the basement, but something tells you to wait. Give yourself a few hours of mostly normal before diving back into 1912's greatest hits, Ghost Edition. Instead, you do something that lighthouse keepers have done since the beginning of lighthouse time. A full morning systems check. Oil, stable, lens, turning, fuel reserves, enough for another night. Water level, low but not desperate. You run your hand over the walls of the structure. The stone is cold but steady. This place was built to last, and it has. Through storms, through wars, through generations of tired souls who've climbed its spiral guts in the dark. Historians still argue whether isolated lighthouses like this one served more as navigation aids or as psychological experiments nobody signed up for. Either way, they stood, and keepers endured. You do another walk of the catwalk. The railing is damp with dew. The sea below is silver and glassy, the kind of ocean that hides things under its stillness, things that don't like to be seen. You walk slowly. Listen to your boots scuff against the old stone. You try to enjoy the silence, or rather, the peaceful silence, the kind that hasn't been interrupted by a ghost knock or rogue feather. You round the tower and pause. Something's there, propped against the base of the lens room door, small, rectangular, wrapped in oilcloth. You kneel, untie the cord. It's a book, one of the journals, not the one you brought up last night. This one's older, dustier, smells like rain and time. On the first page in looping black ink, "To whomever sees what I've seen, welcome to the circle." You whisper, "Oh no." You flip the page. We don't talk about her, but she's always here. The sea listens. The lighthouse remembers. Keep the light turning. You close it. You don't read more, not yet. You tuck it under your coat like contraband. You log it, sort of. 7:54 a.m. Found object outside lens door. Journal. Undocumented. Possibly misplaced. Possibly not. Marked with cryptic welcome. Will review later. Or never. Back inside, you put the book on a high shelf and cover it with an empty tin. That feels like protection. It probably isn't. You light another candle, even though it's morning, just to cut the shadows. You hum to yourself. A sea shanty, maybe. You don't know the words, just the tune. It feels familiar. You realize you're humming the same melody you heard in your dream. You stop, then hum again, the same notes. You log nothing. You pour more tea. The radio crackles. Not static, not feedback. Voices. Faint, fuzzy, like someone calling through cotton. You run to it. Adjust the dial. You catch half a phrase. Clear by noon, but keep watch near. Then nothing, just static. You thump the side of the radio. Nothing returns. Still, it was a voice. Human. That's something. You scribble 8:07 a.m. Brief radio contact. Fragmented message. Sounded normal, real, external. Possibly hallucination. Hopefully not. You stare out the window, watching the light grow stronger. It doesn't feel like victory, not yet, but it feels like morning. And that's enough. The sunlight finally breaks through in a dull, half-hearted kind of way. It's not the triumphant burst of gold you'd expect after a night of foggy purgatory, but rather a pale glow that reluctantly drips down the side of the tower like thin soup. Still, it's sunlight. You take what you can get. The gull is gone. You wonder if he was real. You warm your hands by the weak flame you've managed to coax back to life on the stove. It smells faintly of damp metal and scorched tea leaves, which somehow feels reassuring. Like something in this lighthouse still obeys physics. You pick up the mysterious journal again, the one left outside the lantern room, the one with the poetic threats and culty vibes. You stare at it for a while, then you open it to the next page. She arrives when the wind goes still. You'll hear her on the stairs. Don't speak to her. She only wants to be remembered. You snap it shut. Cool, you mutter to yourself. Very cool. Totally normal day things. You place the journal under your mattress this time, just in case. You're not sure what you're just in casing, but it feels like a defensive move. You do your rounds again. Everything still works. The lens rotates, the light glows, and the foghorn moans out like a lonely walrus. But there's tension now, the kind that hides behind silence, like the building itself is holding its breath. You wipe down the railing on the stairs just to keep moving. The brass is cool beneath your cloth. You hum again, unconsciously, the same melody from before, the one from your dream, the one the journal warned about. You stop. The air shifts. There's a sound, very faint, a shuffle, not wind, not stone, a footstep, one, just one, coming from the spiral stairwell. You spin around. Your mouth is dry. Your pulse is loud in your ears. You hold your breath and listen. Nothing. But the tension, still there. Historians still argue whether reported hauntings at remote stations were the result of acoustic anomalies, sound bouncing through narrow spiral towers, or the mental unraveling caused by months without human contact. You don't know what you believe, but you definitely believe you are not going down that stairwell right now. Instead, you climb, back to the lantern room, your safe spot. You check the gears again, even though they don't need checking. You polish the glass with your sleeve. You whisper, "Good job," to the flame, as if it's your co-worker on a night shift. The sky outside is brighter now, but not exactly clear. The fog clings, like it hasn't made up its mind whether to stay or leave. You pour water from your backup canister, collected from the roof runoff earlier in the week. It tastes like old tin and fresh clouds. You take a few deep breaths, then do something very brave or very stupid. You go back to the stairwell. You descend slowly, carefully. No lantern this time, just the faint natural light filtering through the narrow slits in the stone. You count the steps aloud as you go. 1, 2, 3. Your voice sounds foreign. 4, 5. You stop on 12, because that's where the footprint is. Another one. Just one. Bare. Damp. Not yours. Again. You sit down on the stair, staring at it. You try to be scientific about it. Maybe condensation pooled and your boot picked up the shape earlier. Maybe there's a leak. Maybe a bird with oddly human feet got lost. You look up. The staircase above you is empty. You look down. The staircase below is darker than it should be. You write nothing in the log this time. Instead, you go all the way down. To the base, to the front door, and you open it. The fog is lifting now. The sea is still out there, vast, indifferent, unknowable. But for the first time since your arrival, you see something new on the horizon. A shape, far off, too far to identify, but it's there. A silhouette, a boat maybe, a ship, or just an oddly shaped cloud. You watch it. It doesn't move. It just is. You return inside and write, 8:38 a.m. Object spotted on horizon. Stationary. Possibly a vessel. Possibly a mirage. Possibly an omen. Unsure how to wave "Do not disturb" in Morse. You climb back up and find the journal has fallen open. Not to a new page, to the middle, and the ink is smeared. Fresh, but you haven't written in it. You touch the page. Damp. The words are blurry, but still legible. Don't face her on the stair. She only steps where you've stepped. That's how she remembers. You close the book with hands that won't stop shaking. You place it under the floorboard this time. And then you whisper, because it feels right. I'm still here. just keeping the light going, and the foghorn lets out a long, low groan in reply. You tell yourself it's just the wind, the shape on the horizon is gone. You wake from a shallow, twitchy nap, curled in the chair beside the stove, neck kinked at an angle that'll take chiropractic magic to undo. You stand, groaning, stretch, and check the window. The fog has thinned to a gauzy curtain. The rocks below are visible again. The sea, back to its usual apathetic shimmer. But the object you saw earlier, whatever it was, is no longer there. You press your forehead to the glass and scan the water. Nothing. You tap the glass twice, like it might answer. It doesn't. The gull hasn't returned either. You eat a spoonful of cold beans and decide to call it breakfast part 2. It tastes about the same as breakfast part 1, which is to say, deeply disappointing, but technically food. The light keeps spinning. The horn keeps sounding. The weirdness lingers. You do another full walk of the interior. You've begun referring to the lighthouse's different levels as rooms, even though they're all basically variations of stone tube with slightly different objects inside. But naming them gives them personality. You stop in the gear room, the mechanical heart of the place. You listen to the slow, reliable tick of the clockwork. It's the only thing here that hasn't tried to trick you. Yet. You whisper, "Thanks for staying sane," and pat the crankcase gently, like it's a sleeping pet. Back upstairs, you crack open the journal again. You promised yourself you wouldn't, but you do. The ink is still smeared from the last time. You flip forward. More entries. Some dated, some not. I sang to her. She didn't like that. The wind screamed all night. She stepped when I did. I skipped one step. She stopped. I stepped again. She followed. You close the book, slower this time. You don't bother to hide it now. It feels more like company. You glance at your own logbook. Compared to the anonymous journal, it reads like a sitcom script written in panic. Still, it's yours. You scribble 9:12 a.m. Shape on horizon vanished. Fog lifting. Journal becoming increasingly specific. Possibly predictive, possibly prank by past keeper. You tap your pen twice on the edge of the page. An echo answers. You freeze. That wasn't the pen. You put it down. Tap again. Nothing. Then, faintly, from above, tap. Then again, tap, tap. You swallow. The lantern room. You go, slowly. Each stair is an argument your knees are losing. You reach the top. Push the door open with your shoulder. Empty. Light still turning. Flame still flickering. You step in, and then you see it. On the inside of the glass, 2 handprints. Faint. Fogged. Perfectly placed, side by side, at head height. As if someone, or something, had leaned in from the outside and pressed their palms to the window to look in. Except you're 80 feet above the rocks, and there's no walkway outside the glass. You whisper, "Nope," and back out slowly, like someone trying not to startle a raccoon in their kitchen. Back in the gear room, you sit on the floor. You breathe through your nose. You count to 10. You fail to feel calmer. You write 9:26 a.m. Handprints found inside lantern room glass. No access possible from exterior. Very high, very upsetting. Possibly condensation, possibly ghost gymnast. You decide you've had enough stairs for a while. You sit. You breathe. You hum the tune again. You don't realize it at first, but you're tapping your foot in time with the melody. A slow, even rhythm. Then you notice something. Another sound. In sync. A faint tap. From somewhere below. Matching your rhythm. Exactly. You stop. The tapping stops. You tap again. The sound returns. You test it. Too fast. One slow. From below. Too fast. One slow. Someone, or something, is playing copycat. You stand. Your legs do not want to walk down there again, but you have to. You descend carefully, each step a question. No footsteps this time, no sounds, just cold. You reach the storeroom level and stop. A single candle has been lit in the center of the floor. You did not light it. It flickers slightly, like it's breathing. You approach. At its base, another feather, black, curled, damp, and beneath that, writing, scrawled in chalk. You kneel and read. She remembers you now. Don't forget her name. You whisper, "What name?" The candle goes out. Just like that. You scramble back upstairs, boots clanging on metal and stone, heart slamming against your ribs. In your room, you slam the door. You sit on the cot and stare at your hands. They're shaking. You write 9:52 a.m., candle lit on lower level, message in chalk, name not given, feather returned. Possible recurring motif, losing grip on reality, probable. You don't read the journal again. Not now, maybe not ever, but you keep it next to you, because you don't want to be the only one who remembers. The clock ticks louder now. You're not sure if it's actually ticking louder, or if your ears have just tuned into it like a predator hunting its prey, but the effect is the same. Tick, 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 steady, inescapable. It sounds less like timekeeping and more like a countdown. You're still in the keeper's room, half wrapped in a blanket that smells like long-dead sweaters and sea salt. The journal sits on the desk. The real one, yours. The one filled with anxious jokes and biscuit reviews and cryptic nonsense like seal, possibly prophetic. But it's starting to look like a survival record. You glance at the other book, the journal from before. You haven't opened it again. It just sits there, closed, innocent, like it's not holding all the weird secrets of this damp stone tower. Outside, the fog clears even more. A shaft of actual sunlight reaches the water. You blink like you've just seen a miracle. A boat might be able to find you today, or at least see you. You check the mirror. Yes, there's a mirror. It's tiny, cracked, and hangs crooked on a rusted nail. Your reflection looks, fine. Mostly tired, eyes a little too wide. There's salt crust on your collar and a smudge of something you don't remember encountering. Possibly tea, possibly despair. You laugh softly. You're doing great. You tell your reflection. Then, as you turn to leave, you freeze. For just a flicker of a second, just one, there's something behind you in the mirror, not in the room, just in the reflection. A figure, female. You spin back around. Nothing. You stare at the mirror again. Just you. You cover it with the blanket. Historians still argue whether mirrored hallucinations in lighthouses were symptomatic of carbon monoxide exposure from burning whale oil in unventilated spaces, or just a side effect of prolonged eye contact with your own regrets. You don't feel poisoned. You just feel watched. You do another walk, not for safety, just to be sure you're not alone in a tower with someone who lives in the glass and memory. You reach the lantern room. The handprints are gone. The glass is clean. Spotless even. You didn't clean it. You know you didn't. The gear room hums away, oblivious. You head back down, deciding, against all better judgment, to check the lower levels again. You reach the spot where the candle had been. Gone. Feather. Gone. Chalk writing. Faint smudges remain. Barely there. Like someone tried to erase it, and then thought, hey, close enough. You kneel to look closer. That's when you hear it again. A voice, faint, right by your ear. A whisper, do you know me now? You jump back so fast you knock over a broom that wasn't there yesterday. Or maybe it was. Time is strange now. You scramble back upstairs, skipping steps 2 at a time. You don't look back. You sit in your room again. Blanket now fully over your head like you're 6 years old and monsters follow blanket rules. You write in the log, 10:27 a.m. Mirror showed brief reflection of unknown figure. Handprints vanished. Whisper heard on lower level. Object movement continues. Recommend immediate transfer or full tower exorcism. You sit there for a long time. Then finally, You lift the blanket and do what you've been avoiding. You open the journal. New page. Fresh ink. It wasn't there before. When the light turns without you, she walks. You slam it shut. You sprint up to the lantern room. The light is turning. You didn't wind the gear. You didn't do anything. But it's moving. You reach for the control crank and stop it, forcing the rotation to pause. And for the first time in hours, or maybe ever, it feels like the lighthouse is listening. You whisper, "I see you." The glass fogs up in a single patch. No breath, no hand, just fog. And then it clears. You don't know what that means, but you know you're not alone. You walk slowly back down to the middle level and sit at the base of the spiral. Your legs dangle off the edge. You hum again, the tune from the dream, but now you finish it. You let it resolve. The silence afterward is softer, calmer. You write 10:53 a.m. Light began rotating unprompted. Interference likely not mechanical. Tower presence possibly reactive to acknowledgement. Attempted musical communication, possible response. Peace, you sit quietly, not afraid, not yet hopeful either, just still. The foghorn blows, the sunlight strengthens, and the knocking doesn't return. You sit on the cot, chewing the last edible crumb of biscuit from a tin you've opened and reclosed 6 times today. You're rationing not out of necessity, really, but more out of grim entertainment. The days blur here. Sometimes chewing is an event. You glance at the calendar, its corners curled from humidity. You mark an X on today's square, then count forward. The supply boat was due 2 days ago, then yesterday, then today, and now, maybe not at all. You try the radio again, nothing but crackle. Maybe they're out there, maybe the fog's just too thick for a clean signal, or maybe someone back on the mainland saw your name on the keeper's schedule and said, "Let's give this guy a little more time to settle in." You sit by the window and watch the sea for signs of motion. None come. There's an old entry in the logbook you dig up, a century old, give or take. A keeper scrawled, "No resupply for 16 days, ate barnacle soup and old sugar, saw wife in the fog, never had a wife." You stare at the page for a long time. You try to laugh. You don't quite make it. You write, 11:47 a.m., boat delayed. Again, likely weather, food low, spirits uneven, vision, single wife free, for now. You check the fuel stores. They'll last a bit longer. The oil drum is dented from years of clumsy drops and one documented axe incident. You don't ask. The light turns. Still slow. Still steady. You've stopped talking to it. It doesn't need comfort anymore. It is the comfort now. Historians still argue whether lighthouse supply delays were simply due to bad weather, or if lighthouse authorities intentionally isolated keepers to test their resolve. You don't feel like a test subject, not anymore. You just feel forgotten. You go back downstairs and dig out your emergency food stash. 1 tin of peaches, a small bar of bitter chocolate, and something labelled simply protein loaf. You shudder. You tuck it back into the drawer. You're not that desperate. Yet. You make more tea. It tastes like it always does. Faintly of rust and regret. Then you hear the boat engine. Your heart leaps. You rush outside, nearly slipping down the slick stairwell. You race to the shoreline. Yes, race. And scan the water. Nothing. No boat. No engine. No movement. Just you. And the fog. And the gull who may or may not be a hallucination at this point. You return inside, chest tight. You write 12:16 p.m. Phantom boat engine. Confirmed illusion. Hearing things. Not unusual. Possible indicator of mild isolation symptoms. Do not eat the protein loaf unless legally dead. You sit down. You hum the tune again. You notice your foot tapping. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And somewhere, faintly, you hear it echoed. A tap. From below, you sigh. Not today. Today, you're only dealing with real-world nightmares. Like the possibility that you're stuck here for weeks. alone. There's no longer a clear distinction between day and night. The fog outside thickens again, wrapping the lighthouse like wet cotton. The horizon disappears. The sky melts into the sea. Your watch says it's early afternoon, but your body says it's last Tuesday, and your mind says, don't ask. You climb to the lantern room to check on the light. Still burning, still rotating. You crank the gear mechanism just in case. The steady click of the machinery is a comforting kind of noise, less like a sound, more like a presence. You glance out the high window, nothing but fog. You squint. Is that a ripple? Number. Just your brain playing connect the dots with white noise. You descend the stairs slowly, hand on the rail, eyes fixed on the curve ahead. Every time you turn a corner, part of you expects to see her, but she doesn't come. Today, the lighthouse feels quieter than usual. Too quiet. You step into the main room and stop, because the chair is turned. You didn't leave it that way. You're almost sure. Almost. It faces the door now, as if someone had been waiting in it, or for it. You approach. There's a note tucked into the seat, not paper, cloth, and on it, stitched with something thin and dark. She dreams through you now. You don't touch it. You just sit on the floor and breathe. You write, 12:53 p.m. Message stitched into cloth. Appeared in chair. Unconfirmed origin. Possibly prank by earlier keeper. Possibly her. Possibly me. Possibly no one. Tired. You find yourself whispering aloud. Who is she? And the silence that answers is not empty. It's thoughtful, like the lighthouse is choosing not to respond. You glance toward the stairs again. A gust of wind rattles the glass upstairs. The first real wind in hours. You take it as a sign of something. Probably best not to define it. You head down to the basement. You rarely go this deep unless something breaks or a fuse needs replacing. But today you just need to be down there, close to the bones of the tower. It smells like salt, rot, and damp rope. You sit on an old crate, staring at the stone foundation. You notice a patch of wall that's different, lighter, scraped clean. Curious, you move closer. There's writing carved faintly into the surface. Keep her memory warm. Keep the flame fed, or she forgets you. There's a little circle etched beneath it. You've seen it before, in the journal. You trace it with your finger. It's colder than the rest of the wall. You step back, and the lantern upstairs flickers. Just once, then stabilizes. You don't breathe until the ticking resumes. You return to the main level. Sit. Log, 1:21 p.m. Wall inscription discovered. Matches journal symbol. Possibly linked to lighthouse folklore. Possibly ritual. Light flickered briefly. No mechanical fault found. You drink the last of the tea, cold now. You wonder how much longer this place will hold itself together, or how much longer you will. You start humming again. No tapping response this time. Just the soft, distant sigh of the foghorn. Maybe she's listening. Maybe she's resting. Either way, the lighthouse remembers. And so do you. You've developed a new routine. Not by choice. By necessity. Wake up. Check the light. Boil water, if there's any left. Circle the tower. Speak to no one. Respond to no sounds. Human. Write. Repeat. You've even begun greeting the machinery. The crankshaft. You call her Madeline now. The stovepipe. Old Percy. The light itself. Just Captain. You're not crazy. You're lighthouse lonely, which is a very specific, historically documented condition involving anthropomorphized furniture, emotional seagulls, and complete mistrust of fog. The horizon remains blank. The radio's gone to static and stubbornness. The journal remains unopened. The stitched cloth still sits in the chair. You've developed the habit of walking in sideways so you're not startled by it anymore, like it's just part of the decor now. A strange cryptic throw pillow from a ghostly Etsy shop. You step outside onto the narrow catwalk encircling the lantern room. The wind is back today, playful, almost gentle. For the first time in what feels like weeks, you smell something other than mildew and tea. Salt, actual sea salt, fresh, real. You laugh, you almost forget the isolation, the sounds, the footprints. You're alive. The lighthouse is standing, the light is turning. You've kept the promise. Then you see the rope, dangling halfway down the tower, like a forgotten ladder to nowhere, swaying slightly. You lean over the railing and trace it down with your eyes. It doesn't connect to anything, it's just hanging. You whisper, "That wasn't there yesterday." No response. You take a breath, walk inside, and write, 1:49 p.m. Rope spotted outside lantern balcony. No source, no anchor point. Possibly symbolic, not touching it. You descend the tower again. The steps are more familiar now. They creak in the same places, groan at the same weights. You talk to them sometimes, thanking them for not breaking. You stop halfway and listen. Silence. It's no longer threatening. It's the kind that holds a breath, not a blade. Historians still argue whether the quiet in remote lighthouses was a psychological weapon or an accidental spiritual cleansing. You think maybe both. You sit in the gear room and begin sketching the tower's layout, not for any reason, just to remember it, to preserve the strange, narrow logic of this place. The base, the middle quarters, the storeroom, the gear room, the lantern, the catwalk, the crawl space you've never opened, the stairs, always the stairs. You hum while you draw. This time, no tapping answers, no footsteps, no shadowy mimicry, just the song and your own breath. You make tea. It's better today. Maybe your palate has adjusted, or maybe the kettle has finally purged its rust. You eat the chocolate bar from your stash, slowly, like it's sacred. And for the first time in a long time, you don't think about her. You think about you, about how strange it is, what the body and mind can endure. You read back through the logs. Yours, the old ones. Notes from other keepers who lived, breathed, dreamed in this stone spiral. There's a thread through them, a whisper of something shared. Not just hardship, recognition. You close your book, light the lantern on the desk. It flickers warm and steady, and from far below a gull cries. You smile, still here, still keeping, still remembering. The fog has thinned, the ghost seems quiet, and your mind, while frayed around the edges like a well-worn sleeve, feels surprisingly steady. So today, you declare it, Maintenance Day. You say it out loud like it's a national holiday. No one answers, which is either comforting or unsettling depending on the hour. You start at the bottom, because dignity means nothing when the floorboards smell like kelp stew. The storeroom is damp again. You pull the crates away from the walls, grumbling at every barnacle you have to scrape off the floor. They crunch under your knife like tiny seafood secrets. Some are shaped like faces. You choose not to acknowledge that. You find your old boots, your good pair, and pick them up. Bad idea. The soles squelch. They've birthed a small ecosystem. Mold, you whisper, as if naming it will shame it into retreat. Advanced, probably sentient. You toss them aside and add possible biohazard to your maintenance log. Then pause, add a smiley face next to it. You're allowed jokes. It's Maintenance Day. You polish the brass railings, not because anyone will see them, but because your reflection in tarnished metal has begun to resemble a haunted turnip. You want at least one surface in here to reflect something human. The railing on the spiral stair glints when you're done. It feels like a minor victory, like beating solitaire or surviving canned mackerel. The gear room comes next. You oil the crank housing and whisper, "Still with me, Madeline?" She creaks gently in return. You check the pressure gauge even though it's more for show these days. You clean the levers, gently shooing away the cobwebs. One web holds what might be the smallest, laziest spider you've ever seen. You name him Neil. Neil does not move. You wipe down the supply shelves and find a tin labelled butter substitute, possibly lemon. You put it back without breaking eye contact. Back upstairs, you polish the lens. It takes time, patience, gentle hands and circular motions. Each pane catches the light differently. It dances across the walls like a slow disco made entirely of restraint. You pause halfway and look out. Still sea, still sky. You feel oddly proud, like you've protected something today. Not just the ships, not just the light, but the memory of what it means to care for something no one else sees. Historians still argue whether lighthouse keepers truly believed they were vital or if the rituals of cleaning and routine simply helped them endure the loneliness. You think it's both. The brass shines. The steps are clean. The mould boots are sealed in a box labelled "Never Open." You return to your room. The journal remains shut. The stitched cloth in the chair hasn't moved. The rope outside is still gently swaying. But you feel grounded, as if for one whole day, the lighthouse stopped whispering and simply let you be. You sit at the desk and write. 2:34 p.m. Full maintenance completed. Gear oiled. Lens cleaned. Surfaces polished. Mold colony contained. Morale, strange but steady. You underline that last part. Strange but steady. Seems accurate. Seems enough. The light turns. The foghorn breathes. The sun begins to dip behind the cloud bank like it's been spying on you all day and finally decided to clock out. The brass still gleams. The kettle hums on the stove. And you just sit. Still here. Still keeping. Still remembering. You don't check the horizon anymore. Not because you've given up, but because you've let go. If the boat comes, it comes. If not, well, you've learned the patterns of this place, the creaks, the sighs, the ghostly quirks. You've learned how to keep the light and how to keep yourself. The light turns. You breathe with it. The kettle on the stove hisses in a friendly way, not an angry one. You pour the water into the cracked mug and stir in the last of the dry leaves. It's more dust than tea now, but you tell yourself it's a special blend. Sea Fog Reserve, exclusive to keepers going quietly mad at the edge of the map. You sip. It's terrible. You grin. The stitched cloth is gone now. Disappeared from the chair without a sound. No puff of smoke, no wind, just absence. You didn't hear it go. You didn't feel it go. But somehow you know it's finished. You go up to the lantern room one last time. The sky is clear now. Absurdly, defiantly clear. As if to say, see? We were always here. You just needed to wait it out. The sea below reflects the pinks and golds of sunset. The waves curl gently against the rocks. You can see the whole world from here, or at least the sliver of it that will ever matter. And there, on the horizon, a boat. You blink, slow. No sound of an engine yet, but you know it's real. It's small, moving steady, still far, but not impossibly so. You should be relieved. But instead, you feel something deeper, a quiet grief. Not because you're unhappy to leave, but because this place, strange and unforgiving and utterly irrational, became yours. You touch the railing, one last circuit down the stairs. Your hand grazes the rail with each step like saying goodbye to an old friend. Madeline, Percy, even Neil the spider, who hasn't moved in 4 days and might actually be a speck of dust. You reach your room. You pack nothing, just the journal. Yours, not hers. You leave hers tucked beneath the cot. You think she'll prefer it that way. You light one candle, just a stub now. Let it burn while you wait. And then, without writing a single word more, you sit by the window and listen, not to ghosts, not to voices, just to the lighthouse, still breathing, still turning, still remembering. So now, the night eases in like a slow breath. The air has calmed. The wind rests, and even the sea seems to exhale with you. You've done what you came to do, not just to keep the flame alive, but to keep yourself alive in the quiet. The lighthouse doesn't whisper anymore. It doesn't need to. It said what it needed to say. You heard it. The strange patterns, the tapping floors, the stitched words, they weren't puzzles to be solved. They were stories, left behind, echoes in stone and salt. And now, you've added yours. Outside, the boat comes closer, its tiny light just blinking against the horizon. But you don't rush to meet it. There's no need to run from what's behind you. Tonight, everything slows. Your heartbeat softens. Your limbs get heavy, and your mind, your beautiful, tired, spiral stair-tamed mind, can finally rest. Because the tower's still standing, the flame still burns, and somewhere, out there on the water, someone else is coming to take the next shift, to meet the sea, to hum their own song in the stairwell. You'll pass the light to them and leave behind the hum, the steps, and maybe her, or maybe not. Maybe she follows the light, but she's gentle now and quiet. So close your eyes. Let your breath settle. Let the fog wrap around the tower like a wool blanket pulled snug. You did it. You kept the flame, and the lighthouse remembers. So sleep now, keeper. The sea will wait. The light will turn, and morning will find you.